You are listening to the Global CTE podcast with your host, Sylvester Chisom.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Global CTE podcast. I am Sylvester Chisom, your host, and today we are in for a very special treat. I have my good friend here, Mr. Atul Temurnikar, who is all the way from Singapore, sharing wisdom and advice to us. As you know, the point of this show is to wrap a blanket of goodwill around our career tech education community to share best practices in preparing our students for success in the global marketplace. Now, let me tell you about Atul. Atul serves as the co-founding trustee and executive chairman of Singapore-based Global Schools Foundation, a nonprofit institution with 23 campuses of multicultural environments under its umbrella. GSF has a mission to give every child an equal chance at success through world-class education. Atul is also a prominent member of the education industry in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, North and South Asia, and the Middle East. His significant efforts in the education sector include being a member of the schools subcommittee of the National Integration Committee that was set up by the government of Singapore. Atul also participated in recommending changes to the Indian foreign direct investment policies for India's education sector, which were then implemented with a special cabinet approval. Mr. Temurnikar is a staunch advocate of high quality education that transcends socioeconomic boundaries, from Korea to Japan in the East to Singapore to Malaysia and the ASEAN, India, and the Middle East. Atul, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. The work that you're doing across the world, across Asia, you're really making a big impact on education and trying to prepare our students for success. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into it. I was on the website for GSF, and I saw this quote from you, and it said, "It is our responsibility to make every ordinary child into an extraordinary global citizen." My question to you is, how do we get that done?
Exactly, and you hit the nail on the head. When we have every ordinary student, right? When I say ordinary, let me put it this way: every student has its own potential, has its own weaknesses and strengths. The biggest important lesson that we have learned in our journey of 2 decades is to actually identify and help the student to identify what are their strengths and weaknesses. How can we improve upon the weaknesses? And when we're talking about every child, I think in a school where you have hundreds and thousands of students, and the teachers are dealing with, on an average, anything between 50 to 100 students during their academic years, it's impossible for a human being to be able to know exactly what's going on with every child, right? That's where technology comes in a big way. Now, we have personalization technology. We have multiple insights and data analytics that are being deployed for the use of the teacher. Now, that makes it very easy for every teacher to become an outstanding teacher, because he or she is going to really be tracking every child's movement, their daily progression, their contributions, their assessments, their behavior, their value system, and it can go on and on and on. So I think the important part is to first empower our teachers to be able to know every child as an individual and to be able to follow their progression, be it positive, be it negative, whatever. And to be able to do that articulately without being intrusive into the life of the child. There are many things that you can know about the child without asking the child. And that makes it very easy, because then the personalization is being initiated from the teacher's side. The teachers have a lot more insights and a lot more data points in terms of what they should be looking at, how they should be encouraging the children indirectly or subtly. So it's not like I have given an assessment, my report cards are in front of you, and you now tell me how good or bad I am, whether I should be thrown out of the class or whether I should be lifted up like a celebrity. I think it's
let me stop. Okay, I want to stop you with something you said. I want to hit on something. Okay. You talked about personalized learning, and that is, I'm a firm believer in that. Our community is a firm believer in that. And you also mentioned data. So tell me more about how are you using data to help improve personalized learning? Can you give me some things you guys are doing?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, the assumption that many people have that the only data you have is about assessments, but that's not correct. The data lies in our ecosystem, in our everyday behavior, patterns, observation, what peers are talking about you, what teachers think about you, right? Now, when you're thinking about something, that data doesn't exist in the system. Now, it's important for us that if a teacher, based on certain observations, data points, is able to think about a particular child, and she's got some ideas about how this particular child can improve. Now, we give immediate access to the teacher to be able to put in her points in what we call as student development plans. It's a student development plan for everybody. So a teacher would be able to go back into that system, and it kind of filters all the things that the teachers are thinking about, what they want to a particular child to be working on, and we get that data in the system. Now, once that data comes in the system, it's important to have that data being presented to the right people. And let's say if a teacher feels, you know what, I think this particular child is super good curious about exploration of space. He keeps talking about space, but then he's very good in humanities. And the subjects that you need for space, physics or science and maths, are somehow not really his forte. Now, can I do a magic whereby I can increase the curiosity and the engagement of the child with those specific subjects like physics, which can actually get him into a career or get him to explore a career, possible career in space? Now, this is how you want to actually line up the thought process, the indicators available around you in the ecosystem, and to be able to then explore them from an actionable point of view. So it sounds very easy, but it's technologically damn difficult. At the end of the day, we're all people.
Right.
You can say, hey guys, please give me your thought process, please give me your inputs. But then how many people are going to record? We don't record everything that we think whole day, right?
Right.
So, but it's important to create a platform, a collaboration platform that's going to be useful to a teacher. And because you asked me about the data points, it's important to capture data points outside the assessments. Assessments are damn easy. You got examinations, you got answer sheets, you got results for scorecards. You have it, right? I mean, that you can present to any 10th grader and he will tell you what is good or bad, right? That's not analytics. That's not personalization. That is one of the important core elements of personalization. And we don't want to sound as if that is not important. But the other parameters, and I would give a 60-40 rating. 60% assessment side and 40% to the non-assessment parameters, which could be very useful in shaping the lives of these ordinary students.
That is so very well said. I want to push you on that. The other parameters, like, can you highlight some of those other parameters that you think are important?
Yes. So let's say we have this engagement of the students, and let's say they're doing a group project. Now, in a group project, you can see a lot of people's behaviors, attitudes, group dynamics, ability to become people leaders, ability to become good thought leaders. And some are good in data, some are good in lateral thinking, some are good in execution, some are weak in execution. Now, when they're working in a group, and let's say the students come across certain observations, and the teacher has observed certain behavioral patterns, engagement patterns, which lead the teacher to believe that there are certain red flags with a particular child. Maybe it relates to people management, the way you say things graciously, or you maybe rub off somebody on the wrong side, which leads to a failure of group performance. And if the teacher has picked up some data in terms of any red flags or orange flags, and the teacher is able to capture that and make sure that that's in the system. So next time when you have a corridor chat with your student and say, hey, John, you got to be a little bit friendly with your colleagues. that is something I would like to advise you to go and watch some, maybe movies or maybe some animations which will help you improve that. How about that intervention? That's a very vital intervention. You can't tell this in front of 35 or 40 or 20 kids in a classroom, but you can tell them in a very subtle way. The child may not know exactly where that came from, but it's a very good intervention tactic or a strategy. So it's basically trying to crystallify the elements of strategy that are required to be done and to be able to give that very easily so that teachers can access that, teachers can talk about it and do it in a very subtle way, like a social conversation, rather than being a prescriptive conversation.
Right. I like how you said that. I want to go back to something you brought up, the space, the kid and the space exploration example, and how you were tying in math and the science and different curriculum points. I had recently, we had my guy Petri Ilo from Finland on, and he was talking a lot about interdisciplinary curriculum. So I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on some best practices in implementing interdisciplinary curriculum? Because you just gave that space exploration example just so easily, like, just bring this in and bring that in. So I'm curious, what are some best practices you think of when you think about interdisciplinary?
So one of the things we have done in order to bring that element of interdisciplinary element in the curriculum is when we plan for the instruction plans for the children, let me give an example. Let's say we're talking about a particular instruction plan for mathematics, grade 5. And we're talking about, maybe integers, maybe, certain formulas or theorems. And it's all about mathematics, right? I bet 50% of the class would probably get disengaged or may not be very interested to hear or may not be very curious to know about that. Now, what we have done is we've given the freedom to teachers to bring in interdisciplinary context in an element of maths. And how they would do that is they would suddenly pick up an element of humanities or something to do with fine arts or something to do with languages and bring it in and make the conversation more meaningful so that I can have that engagement level of the average audience, more than what a minimum is. And secondly, if they can extrapolate examples of the language of fine arts and bring it into how mathematics has played a role in that particular aspect of language, and this is not done on the fly because this cannot be done on the fly. So it's important for the curriculum planners to be able to bring in that interdisciplinary. So whenever they design the instruction plans, they have to create cross linkages with other subjects and say what element of other subject can I briefly bring it in, which may be making it interesting for a student to be able to understand this concept better. So it's also kind of refreshing on the other aspects of other subjects. And there's a great deal of research we do in terms of putting this together. And that's how, so any curriculum, be it American, be it IB, be it British, or any other curriculum, we have always been a strong promoter of making an interdisciplinary approach to the curriculum. And the planning is continuous. It goes on year. And the fact is, that makes it easier. So when the teacher walks in, she has all the points, the talking points for the day in those 30 or 40 minutes. And the teachers would be completely aligned with what is supposed to be talked about and how do you bring in those interdisciplinary points. So it makes it easier for the teachers because the research has already happened. And that's how we kind of engage on the subjects.
I want to, that's like a hot topic now where I'm hearing a lot of conversation around that interdisciplinary piece, and it's always good. I'm super curious about it and seeing how, people who are doing it the best around the world. We have a school here that one of our school partners with Global CTE, it's a high school, and we work with their algebra and entrepreneurship class. And the engagement is through the roof on those kids who maybe in any other situation were totally disengaged with mathematics. And they're seeing a lot of great results by incorporating it and personalizing the learning by first starting with what's an entrepreneurial project that you care about, and then we'll teach you math through that. I want to switch gears a little bit because I have such a global guest here. Like you're all over the world. So what are some big trends in education that you're seeing across the world that are piquing your interest?
So in a way, I would say there has been amazing interest of technology after COVID. We all know that. And every country has been pretty much, attracting the changes that they want to do in terms of education. And it's more customized and aligned to the national priorities. So for example, in Singapore, it has been more about continuous training, continuous learning journeys, skills training, getting people to, one of the most interesting things that Singapore did during COVID is they came up with a program called mid-career training programs. Right?
Okay, yeah, tell me more.
And this was very interesting because you had lots of layoffs during COVID. And now let's say I'm a food and beverage specialist, maybe I'm a chef, or maybe I'm serving in the food and beverage industry, and now F&B is all closed. So they come and say, here's the program. We will fund the salaries of these people, provided you give them a training to become something else, and to be good enough for being employed in another industry or another profession. So we saw many of the airline professionals who generally fly as crew or are serving in the airlines who were grounded actually ended up becoming teachers. And they were very good teachers because you see, the crew members from Singapore Airlines or any other airlines, they're trained very hard to look after their customers. And when they came into preschools and schools and they became primary school teachers, they were super efficient. They were very communicative. And some of them, I would say majority of them, who wanted to continue in the profession, continued. So the mid-career program that Singapore brought about was very interesting. And we also had some very good success of these particular programs. Mm-hmm. In terms of Japan, I would say it was all about women empowerment. Okay. The East Oriental country is so amazing. We have 3 schools there. And what we find there is the ability of the industry and the government to be able to come up with more very curated kind of roles, given that women are deeply involved with the extent of managing the families, managing the professions. So they had a lot of empowerment programs, which were found very useful, particularly with the youth, where they were able to get into new professions through these empowerment programs. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. In South Korea, it's about birth rates. Obviously COVID did help a little bit in improving the birth rates. But when it came to the government programs and particularly encouraging more people to have babies, I think they had been, many countries are struggling. So is Singapore, so is South Korea. But I think some of the programs that they came up with were able to address the major issues and challenges of the fertility issues. Malaysia, we saw something very interesting, though not surprising. The government went and sponsored a lot of devices like the tablets and the laptops to the students because everything was virtual. But I think that gave access to technology to many students across Malaysia. And there are many interior parts of Malaysia which are not as developed as Kuala Lumpur. And so there was a great chance for these students in the remote corners of Malaysia to be able to get access to technology which their parents may not have been able to afford. So that was a good thing that Malaysia did about education. Another interesting entrant into the area of education is Saudi Arabia. I know Saudi Arabia is seen with a different prism, but the way we see it is Saudi Arabia is trying to differentiate itself and move away from an oil economy to a service-based economy. And education has been seen as one of the major transformation pillars for achieving the national goals. They have some amazing plans about the new cities they're working on, called the Neom City. They're also talking about the line. But I had a chance to be in Saudi Arabia a few weeks back, and we were having a dinner with the foreign minister of Singapore in Riyadh, and we got to understand what's really happening on the ground. Now, the vision is so grand that you can't fill in expatriates to build this vision. You got to have the local citizens and the engagement of those citizens in a very big way. So it's very clearly identified that one of the pillars is going to be education. Now, how do you have education? Because you have a national play, you have a blue book about national education, which is already doing its great job, right? But then they said, no, I need a complementary international education, which is going to help us create our citizens, become more familiar with the international education. But instead of they flying out from Saudi Arabia to America or Britain or our European countries, why don't we get them that there? So they invited us. They said, hey, Global Schools Foundation, would you guys be interested in setting up an American school for us? We like what you guys do in Asia. We like what you guys do in some other countries in North Asia. Let's have something that we can create for the Saudi Arabians. And so we have just launched an American school with the IBPYP primary years curriculum, and it's just going to be the first year. So education has been a major driver, and we believe this will only go further, and Saudi Arabia would be able to achieve its national mission and the vision it has to transform itself from an oil economy into a service economy, and so, tourism and many other things are going to be a big.
Let me ask you about that, because I believe with such a clear vision for what they want to do in Saudi Arabia, and then the role that education plays in that, how are they thinking about preparing, say, maybe high school and middle school students with skills, like skills training in advance, or even to even ask you on that, how do you all think about the importance of skills training at GSF?
You know, in 2013, we embarked on a journey to understand what is 21st century learning and how we can adopt aspects of those 21st century learning. So we created a framework called the School of the Future framework. And the School of the Future framework essentially is a model of education that is able to transform itself with the moving years, and is able to keep an eye on next 10 years, next 15 years, to try and see what elements of skills or competencies would be essential in the students that we are training today to become global citizens. And by adopting that School of the Future model, we are now empowering our teachers on the ground. We have a deep engagement with the university. We have a fantastic leadership lecture series through which we invite many leaders who are who's who. For example, we had the opportunity to have Mr. Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister of UK, many other statesmen. Just 2 weeks back, we had the former Vice President of the Republic of India, who came and talked to the students in person. And when they talk about their vision, there are a lot of things that emerge as to how they see the skills evolving in the future. We also engage with the industry. We call the CEOs and industry leaders and several senior leadership people who are able to give their own views, whether it's the pharma industry, whether it's the oil and gas or technology, or for that matter, information technology. And we bring in these people to try and give a sense of future skills. We also have on-ground assessments by teachers who are constantly selecting those skills and competencies. And by the way, competencies and skills are not like I go for a skills lecture or I go for a skills period. They're again integrated as part of our instruction plans. So we talked about interdisciplinary earlier. Yeah. We also have competencies and skills as part of that. Everywhere, these things are wired so that there is enough elaboration and articulation and discussion about what the skills are. And then as part of School of the Future, we've been able to bring about some of these skills into the what we call as built-to-suit studios. So in one of our campuses where I'm currently based, we have close to 42 studios of vocational skills, all the way from culinary labs, to ceramic, making, to, of course, you have maker labs, robotics labs, etc. But I think more on the non-technology as well, the fine arts, the music, the dance, the performance, theater. Some of our alumni have been beneficiaries of this, and we'll talk about more as we move on. But I think we've been able to apply a holistic, what we call as a 9 gems theory, where apart from academics, you have other aspects of the child's development, community welfare, leadership, creativity, right? And all these elements are inbuilt as part of the curriculum. And so the journey is always very engaging. They're never into pure academics. They're always into academics plus, plus, plus. And I think that's how we try to bring this element of skills and vocation, which is a very important pathway to making these students fully future ready.
Man, I love it. Atul, you're speaking my language, man. You are speaking my language. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I want to ask you something in alignment with the things you just said. How are you all thinking about grades? Like, are you doing anything with like competency-based grading, or I'm not sure if you're doing, are you all doing anything with that? I'm curious.
Right. So I think there are some prescriptions from the curriculum boards that we follow,
Okay.
like the American systems and the British systems, and also the IB systems. Now, what happens is grading, as far as subjects are concerned, that's very easy. Right. You have a grading criteria, you have assessment, and you can carry out the grading. But it's also important to be able to use those gradings productively. So in the early part of the conversation, we talked about personalization.
Right.
And we talked about how personalization is important for every student. Now, the grades that come out of the assessment are also part, in a way, input into the personalization framework. And the gradings are then used to be able to, so we have deep analytical models that we use, which are in-house. These models are then run on the system when the assessment grades come in. And we are able to then pick up from the data. Let's say of a cohort of 200 students. Okay. These 5 or maybe 10 students are below the minimum performance level. They should have been at a particular predicted score or a grade, but they are not there. They're somewhere in between. So what we try and do is we create a flagging, I would say, indicator system to say, these are the children who are actually below what their basic potential is, their core potential is. Right. It's okay if you're not really achieving your predicted score, but it's not okay for you to be on the low side of that predicted score. So, using factors like what percentage of performance or grade actually dropped. So percentage can be used as one of the filters. The other filters could be your past scores and your past performance. And we use a combination of these filters to be able to tell teachers and pop out in the teacher's eyes, hey guys, John, Alvin, Frank, and Cindy are actually having issues with their progression on the grades. Let's look into it. And then the teachers will be able to go into the system, be able to analyze it deeply. And it's much easier, right, for a teacher to be able to take those system interventions. And of course, they can use their own interventions, but it becomes easier and they use their time productively. So that's how we use the grades and the processing of that to be able to create personalization pathways.
I love it, Atul. Now, I want to ask you something like this. Now, you're calling in, we're talking, you're in Singapore. What makes the Singapore education system like so amazing? I know you work closely with the education ministry there, so depending on what you're looking at across the world, people are saying Singapore has, it's top tier, number one or close to the top there. What would you say are some of the best practices? Like what's happening in the Singapore education system?
Right. So I think you're referring to the public school systems of Singapore, which are, constantly rated in the top 3 in the world in PISA rankings.
Right.
There is an amazing journey that they have actually charted over the few years. I know for sure that as we joke around, there's an element of military precision in delivering your academic programs. And that is to some extent is definitely there. Okay. But I think the important aspect is to be able to have certain element of, I would say, making it very, very comprehensive, making students work out, not relax, making students work out. So sometimes it does get extended to a little bit more in preschools and all that. Everybody is trying to, there's so much of tuitions and remedial programs here that the tuition industry alone in Singapore is more than $1 billion a year. Just the tuitions alone, right? Forget about schools. Now, what it means is that there is a great focus on trying to become perfect in the subject areas, close to perfect. Not everybody can be perfect depending on different competencies. But that is the approach. So I think whether it comes to basic sciences, maths, STEM subjects, or language, there is an element of FOMO, or I want to be perfect in that area. How can I do that? How can I get the best in my classroom? How can I get best from my enrichment or remedial tuitions so that I can be a good performer? So there is a race, there is a competition. There is no laying back because, I think this is a great world, and today everything is about survival of the fittest. And the country understands that. So it's all about getting your academic frameworks right, making them change with the timing, with the years, aligning them with the industry. One of the biggest things I've seen in Singapore is if you look at a higher learning education, the university education, there is a very close relationship between the R&D institutions, the industry players, and the higher learning institutions. It's the industry which says, I need these skills. 5 years down the line. I mean, today, some of the planning that goes in, I know we are already talking about 2028 or 2030 as to what skills will you require for that industry. How do I go back to the university education or colleges and say, hey guys, can you introduce these subjects? Now, for example, Singapore is setting up a very huge cyber zone where they want to bring in, Interpol is already there. Some of the most complex cyber warfare, anti-warfare frameworks are there, but they're inviting more players from private sector to come in. Now, when you build such a massive cyber framework, and it's considered as one aspect of defense, it's no more a technology play.
Right.
How do you build skills that you're going to need that by 2030? So you have to have all those back-ending programs in the universities, in the high schools, and in the schools as well. So, we have those technology programs which are giving them the right impetus, but that's how the linkage is there. So I think Singapore has the advantage of being small and quick. It's able to align those very quickly. But I think the more complex countries like America, it becomes extremely complex, very political. If you want to align certain things, then everything will be seen as a prism of black or white or this or that. And then everybody's going to talk about that this is really not what we want. I mean, COVID was the best example. You had so many people saying, oh, I don't want a vaccine. And somebody said, yeah, we should have it. But that's how complex countries are. So we think that there's a great deal of reality in the education. There's element of perfection, trying to deliver it the best way possible. So all these things have to fall in place for a country to emerge nationally as ranked number 2 or number 1 in the PISA rating.
Yeah, absolutely. That was very well said. I'm curious for you, Atul. I've got 2 more questions for you, and then we'll jump off here. You're leading schools across multiple nations, multiple continents. As it relates to education, what's keeping you up at night? Like, what's on your mind that's like, oh man, what's keeping you up at night?
I think there's a single, one of the most important aspects that keep me going is the fact that I can shape a life.
Yeah.
When I say when I talk about I as an institution,
yeah,
we can take in that raw student who is full of potential, who's full of ideas, creativity, and we want to give them the right path, a productive, engaging path to make them better learners, to achieve their goals which are required to be achieved in academics, but yet become a person of immense values, a person of great ethics, a person of great character, and a person who can be a leader in any sphere. You don't have to be a leader as a CEO. You can lead, you can help, you can become a good team player in achieving the larger aspect of benefit for the community. So it's ultimately we want every child to be able to improve and to achieve their best, do the right things in their journey. And we want to see these young kids from different parts of the world, from Cambodia to India to Indonesia to Thailand to Japan, Korea, and all the way to Europe and even North America. We want these students to be able to understand that there's a great deal of achievement they can do. They can do wonderful things in their life. It's not about grades. It's about believing in yourself. And it's about going after that magic wand that you think is your potential. And if they discover that during their school journey, I think we've achieved our purpose.
Man, very well said. Very well said. So my final question for you. This is something I ask to all of my guests, and I'm super curious your response here. What is your vision for the future of career in tech education?
Well, in terms of career in tech education, I would say technology is an inseparable element of learning today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, every month, every week, we see some amazing technologies coming into the market, which are achieving certain very noble causes, right? And they are, in a way, transforming lives. So when you look at a career in edtech or career in this particular sector, one should look at it as I'm working on a solution that's going to transform the lives. In some way, maybe 5%, 2%, 0.0001%. But yes, ultimately it's transformational. and it's a human life. It's not about if I write a great program and the NC machine can do a better precision or much more efficient way of producing my iPhones. That's a different world. But if you're talking about using an edtech kind of technology to transform lives, to improve the learning, to get better skills, better vocational aspects, to even create good characters and good people, I think these are fundamentally going to be what we call as unicorns that are coming in. I see many examples of these unicorns coming in, and really, money aside, I think they are great transformational technologies that are in the market, and I think definitely students should be able to explore these areas. And as long as you make something better for the community, no matter how long or how big or how small it is, it's going to be better for the community, and you will get your mojo there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This has been such an insightful interview. You've delivered so many gems. You shared such great global perspective, and I know our listeners are really going to enjoy learning from you and the work that you are doing with the Global Schools Foundation. If someone wants to follow you on social media or find you somewhere, where would you suggest that they go?
I'm definitely available on LinkedIn, so you can be in there and we'll be connected.
Absolutely. It is our responsibility to make every ordinary child into an extraordinary global citizen. Atul, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom on the show today. I hope everyone listening enjoyed, and please share this out with a friend, share it with a colleague and someone else so we can continue to prepare our students for success in the global marketplace. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you like it and subscribe to the podcast. And as I always say, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Global CTE podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to be the first to know about future episodes.